68, an all-encompassing digital network of podcasts, live streams, and newsletters that cover the sport at every level on every platform. SiriusXM, Channel 84.
You are watching the Field of 68. For the first time, our network brings you a live game broadcast. Mike Bothwell for the win! Oh!
This is Bruce Pearl.
Sean Shire.
Sean Miller.
I love the Field of 68.
I listen to you guys every morning.
Are we still live?
UConn wasn't on my radar.
From the bluest of the blue bloods to the smallest of the mid-majors, the only way to keep up with college basketball is through the Field of 68.
Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show. With you, as always, I'm your host, Andrew Ledman from hammerandrails.com. Who I got with me right here? Casey, why don't you introduce yourself for the folks who don't know you?
I'm Casey Bartley, co-publisher on a little thing called Boiler Upload over on the Rivals Network.
That's right. That's right. He's over with the Rivals folks, the fancy folks who cover recruiting. So we are back today. Purdue has coming off an exhibition game that was on TV. I'm not sure how we were describing it. I mean, SEC Plus Network. We were able to watch it, though, same time as the Purdue football game. So if you didn't get to watch it because you were watching the Purdue football game, Casey and I have you covered because Casey was actually in attendance at the game. Is that correct?
Yep, I spent a lovely about 24 hours in a rainy Arkansas.
Okay. I didn't know it was raining. We only see the inside of the arena. But Purdue lost 81-77, but it was a good game. It was a lot of fun. These marquee matchups kind of in the exhibition season are a new development. I think in college basketball. I've been a Purdue fan since, the early 90s when I was just a little kid. And I remember Purdue playing teams like Athletes in Action. And I remember Purdue played the Globetrotters one year in an exhibition game.
That's right.
And they got beat. The Globetrotters beat them. But, as of late, teams have really gone to kind of like the secret scrimmage or just, pick random school you've never heard of and played them. But now, Purdue playing Arkansas, Purdue top 3 in the nation based on the AP, and Arkansas 14th. So it was a really great matchup, and I think a good test for Purdue. Purdue came out on the losing end. But before we get into the specifics of the game, Casey, I just want to ask you overall, how much do these exhibition games matter? I mean, we saw Purdue lost, Kansas lost, Michigan State lost in an exhibition over the same time frame as Purdue. I mean, do these things really matter? Yeah,
clearly Illinois is going to win the Big Ten now.
Yes.
Just no doubt about it.
Which is what everybody thinks.
Yeah. Purdue and Michigan State, maybe 3rd or 4th,
Yeah.
I think it matters more for certain teams. And I mean, it's one of those things where there's no downside. Right. Matt Painter has been effusive and loving it because obviously it's like a free test. It's a free on the road atmosphere. Generally a lot of teams have cupcakes to start the year. You can kind of get an overinflated sense of self from that. When you're beating teams by, 30, 40 points, you're getting in deep into your bench, all your 8th, 9th, 10th guys on the roster looking like starters. So to see, to really have to go up against it to, pretty much all off season, we've heard about Matt Painter say, hey, we need to limit turnovers. We need to shoot the ball better when we're open, be more aggressive. That's pretty easy to do when you're playing Grace College, which Purdue will do tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's going to be easy to do until they get to Hawaii. But to see Purdue come out and struggle in areas that Painter has made a focus, that's going to be easier to get that message across. They saw they as much. It's funny because, Arkansas and Purdue definitely went into this game with a little different mindset. Talking to someone with the team.
And I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
I'm talking to someone with the team today, and pretty much they had talked to the assistant coaches, and Purdue pretty much just handed out like a roster sheet. And they're like, these are who the guys have. And that was on purpose. Like they wanted the guys to just go out and play. Arkansas, Eric Musselman, the shirt raising, transfer grabbing.
He was intense during this game.
Yeah. Musselman had them all watch every game in Europe. Sat his guys down and watching, just deep, dark Purdue in Europe games. And we both watched a lot of those games. I know I watched all of them. I don't know if you caught all of them.
Yeah, I watched quite a bit of it.
Those were not valuable minutes spent for you, for me, for anyone. There was maybe like 20 minutes of action that looked at all remotely like what this team's going to be.
Yeah, the teams Purdue played in Europe were just simply overmatched.
Yeah.
Purdue was up by like 30, 40 points for a lot of the time. We're throwing in lineups we'll never see in a game. It was good just to get the guys the minutes and to get them out there, but I don't think anything of substance was really learned while they were over in Europe.
Yeah. So this absolute sicko Musselman has his team sitting down, recruiting, just like watching those videos, and then had them watch old Shaquille O'Neal footage to see what teams were successfully able to do against Edey.
Look,
we are talking.
Look,
in depth.
I love Zach Edey, but he is not Shaquille O'Neal in his prime.
It's the only comp in college, and to be honest, you have to guard him in a similar way. But that is where that strategy came from. And Arkansas was good against Edey. Edey had 15 points. Edey got into foul trouble early.
I was going to say the foul trouble did a lot of their work for them.
Right. But he never got in a rhythm. He never really dominated the game the way that you're used to seeing. And a lot of those 20 turnovers were trying to get Edey the ball, not very well. Whether it was Trey Kaufman-Wren struggling, the guard struggling to get it over the length of Arkansas. But Arkansas did a thing that it was really Nebraska that kind of started it last year, where it's almost a triple team on Edey before he even gets the ball. And it was just like, we're going to jump these passing lanes and make it tough on you. And so, Arkansas spent a lot of time to have this knowledge and effort to go up against Edey, someone they're not going to face again unless they play Purdue.
Right. They'll never, and there's no, as you said, there's no comp for Zach Edey in college basketball right now. It's not as if you're preparing for a guy who you're going to see a similar guy on 6 or 7 or 8 other teams. You're preparing for a guy who's a one-of-a-kind player. So was that really worth your time? But I want to stick with something you said earlier, that Painter basically and the team handed out a one sheet, like, here's who's on Arkansas. It just reminds me of kind of what we would do in the paint crew when I was at Purdue. It's like you hand out a one sheet about here's the guys on the squad. Here's what you can yell at them to mess with them. Here's where they've struggled. Give them some hell during the game.
I don't think there were any song lyrics.
I would imagine not.
I don't think so.
You have to imagine that. Not a lack of effort on the coaching staff. I want to be clear. I'm not saying they didn't care, but it would almost like was they wanted the players to go into it a little unprepared to see how they would react.
They
and I think there's something to that. Painter, it sounds like he didn't really care about the result, and maybe he even is happy with a loss because it knocks him down and makes him realize you're not going to waltz through this season. Just like, you would hope the team won't need a reminder of that after how last season ended, but it's always good to make sure teams know and players know where they are.
Yes and no. I definitely think he wanted to win. He coached to win that game. If you look at the box score, Miles Colvin and Brian Waddell, they didn't play in the second half.
Yeah.
Those are two young guys that, like, he is waiting for his wing position for someone to step out above everyone else. And it just hasn't happened yet. He didn't give them a chance in the second half in that game.
Right.
Instead,
no minutes at all was surprising to me.
Camden Heide got a little bit of run, saw the baseline dunk, wasn't able to knock down a shot. But pretty much what we saw was Purdue playing to win when they were out there. What he said he wanted is he wanted to see his guys react. He wanted them to just go out and play. And he wanted to focus, like, his preparation on them. What are they doing? Which makes a lot of sense. Also, can't say Purdue really did well there. 20 turnovers, offense looked, Braden Smith said after the game, he felt like his guys kind of just got caught up in the game, didn't really run their stuff. Anytime Zach Edey's not getting the ball as much as he should, that's a big reason why. That's It's interesting because last year, Purdue really jumped out early, that into the Marquette game, going through obviously the Phil Knight. And that was a lot about his team just really committing to get Edey the ball. The dictive was, if you get Edey the ball, you will play. And they took that to heart. Might need to relearn that lesson to start the season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you pointed this out on your game wrap on Boiler Upload, that it really changes how you're going to play when Zach Edey gets 2 fouls in the first 10 minutes of the game. And it wasn't as if he played that entire 10 minutes. I mean, he got his first foul, I believe, within a minute of
it was
of
the first
game.
possession. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, of course, you got to try to manage. If you're Painter, you're like, do I keep him out there? Do I see how he plays with 1 foul? It's an exhibition. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. But he took him off for a little while. He came back in around the 10-minute mark and almost immediately, got another foul. So you're playing almost the entire first half without the reigning National Player of the Year. So you got to figure out who is going to take that spot, who is going to take those shots. Ultimately, I think that's a good thing for Purdue. This loss means nothing. It's not going to be in the record books. And even if it was, I mean, a road loss to the number 14 team, not a bad loss. But for Purdue to be able to have that adversity in a tough environment in Arkansas, which, I mean, I'll be straight with you. I don't know much about Arkansas's arena, before watching this game, but I was pretty impressed with their crowd. I thought they did a pretty good job. So for Purdue to be tested like that early on, especially without Zach Edey, I think will pay dividends down the road if they learn from it.
Yeah, what SEC like teams lack in talent, they make up for in caring. So that really comes through in the crowd.
But they care about the conference.
Yes.
SEC, it just means more.
Yeah, it was like 14 team fans coming together.
Yes. Yeah.
It was a good environment, sold out. It's like you said, there just is no downside because it doesn't count against the record. And we did get little glimpses of, Miles Colvin. I would not have guessed that he would come away with 2 blocks in a game.
Right. Yeah.
True freshman, 6'5", going to be really good, really athletic. Talked to him today a little bit about his dad and just, this has kind of always been the place he thought he'd be. But I've watched him in practice all summer defensively. Didn't think there'd be highlights this early on the defensive end. And there were.
Yeah.
And Painter's really talked about how he wants those guys to step up. And this season, it's going to be a lot about Edey and Smith and not turning the ball over. It's also going to be who does step out on the wing. Athletically, size-wise, him, Waddell, Heidi are very intriguing. But they also have gaps in their game, and it's going to be interesting to see who just on the floor goes out and plays.
Yeah. So I think that's enough kind of a general overview of what we saw from the game. Looking at individual performances in this game, who do you think stood out to you, both good and bad? One thing I think is worth highlighting, apart from those you already mentioned, Braden Smith, 7 turnovers. Not what you want to see.
Holy hell, those refs hated him.
Before you go into that, he played a lot of minutes. He was out there trying to do a lot. But 7 turnovers for your primary point guard is not a good look. I know he's only a sophomore, but to see him grow from last year to this year is really one of the things we think can propel this team forward from where they were last year. And 7 turnovers in your first game against a very good team in Arkansas was really troubling. But again, it's an exhibition, not a lot of preparation. How much do you take from that just on that Braden Smith turnover number?
Well, I think you bringing up the turnover number is part of why people undersell him. We talked about this last week. You are profiting off of that narrative right now. You're offering it up to people. Yes.
It is my fault that Braden Smith is underrated. I run a shadow campaign against Braden Smith the whole offseason.
Honestly, I'm watching the game and I don't try to be this person, but like there's some games where officiating, it's just like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
And I think turnovers, he's fouled the
NCAA officiating across the board, I feel like has gone down. the level of officiating over the last few years. And maybe it's because they continuously are changing the rules on them. The freedom of movement, the circle that you have as an offensive player. I remember 6 or 7 years back in the beginning of the season, there were fouls just constantly. You couldn't even get into a flow of a game. Yeah. I mean, it makes basketball basically unwatchable. And then it's one of those, the NCAA does these points of emphasis. They're enforced at the very first games, and then it slowly fades off and you get back to where you are. It just makes no sense.
Freedom of movement, baby. Freedom of movement. So it's a little bit of that, because like there was a play where he drove in, got fouled what I thought was 3 different times, and then kind of stopped and held the ball, looked at the ref like, really? And then got hit again, knocking the ball out. That's 1 of 7 turnovers. But the reason why Arkansas is also a good test is really big guards, a lot of length. They had a 6'6" guy guarding him for a while. Test against teams like that, that's good, because he's going to, between his size, the lack of other playmakers around him, he's going to be, especially on nights where the players around him aren't hitting, they are absolutely going to just send arms, legs, bodies at him.
Yeah.
He's got to navigate that a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as positives, I did think Fletcher Loyer responding. I wrote about that the day after the game.
Yeah.
He came up with a big 3 and then 2 drives and 1s in the second half. Purdue needs a guy like that. That's why Lance Jones is starting next to Smith and Loyer. Because when Painter said today, when he's playing teams like this that are dynamic, they need a little more juice. They need a little more play on the ball. Jones offered that. Wasn't very efficient, didn't really create as well as I think Painter wants him to. But out of guys playing a lot, he's the least experienced in the system, playing with a big guy.
Right.
It's going to take a little while. But, if Loyer can pick up some of that, I think he is also another one that's, by Purdue fans, Loyer does not get a great rap.
No, and I think the reason for that is, I think people have this perception of I think the perception of that is that Loyer is supposed to be a 3-point shooter. Loyer was brought in as a 3-point specialist. We didn't really know what else he was going to do, but that was his thing when he came in. He was the high school, national champion at that 3-point contest that they do during the NCAA tournament. And he comes
not in a live game, by the way, not like, that's not real shooting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's real shooting, but it's not in-game shooting. I understand what you're saying, but, and then he comes in and people expect him to, they have these unrealistic expectations that he's going to be hitting, 50-60% of his threes, that he's going to be Steph Curry. And that's just not realistic.
Really? He's there for the posters. Putting people on a poster.
Exactly. But you saw in this exhibition, he pump faked at the 3-point line and had a nice drive, made the layup and got a free throw out of it. So, I mean, he ended up with 3 points anyway. But that's the kind of stuff he's going to bring to this team. But as much as I think the perception about him is wrong, that he's just a 3-point shooter, we do need him to hit threes. Purdue needs him to hit those threes. I mean, it's just as simple as that. He is the best pure 3-point shooter on this team.
No.
And
does he have a record for most threes made in Mackey Arena?
I mean, Mason Gillis, that's one game. And I understand. Hold on. That's one game that you're talking about. I understand it was a hell of a game. He hit what? Was it 9 or 10? 9 threes in that game. And I love Mason Gillis more so than you do. So let's not pretend that you're the Mason Gillis fan driver here versus me. So I understand Mason Gillis had, I believe, 40% of his threes 2 years ago. He shot a little worse last year. So it would be great if he could step it back up to that 40%. But right now, I think if you just look at pure shooting, I think it's hard to argue that Loyer is not the best pure shooter on the team, whether the stats back that up or not.
First of all, is there a term for a player who is worse at what you think he's known for, but better at everything else?
I don't think that you could,
we need to make that a term.
Okay. You give it some thought and maybe next episode we'll talk about it.
Mm-hmm. But yes, everyone on Purdue needs to shoot better.
Yeah.
They started off again 2 of 13 from 3.
Yeah.
Problem. Not great.
Huge problem.
Big problem. I don't. So I think that leads into one of our conversation pieces that we wanted to talk about, which is, does it concern us as a collective, as people who it would be good for our jobs if Purdue
right.
didn't lose in the first, if I didn't have 3 extra days of hotels in Columbus, Ohio.
Right. Yeah, it would be good for both of the
tournament.
websites that we work for if Purdue were to make a run deep into March, perhaps into the beginning of April.
If they were
that
not
would be good for us.
If they were not a high turnover, low 3-point shooting team, which was the issue last year.
That's what they did. Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons they found themselves out of March at the very first round last year, and it was the worry throughout really the whole season. I would say the second half of the season when
there were no worries after Portland.
No, when Purdue started to kind of win ugly, and they were winning on close games, 1 or 2 points. It was like, hey, we're still winning. The shots will find their level. Water finds its level. We're going to get there. But as the season went on, the question kind of became, well, what is the level of the water? I mean, was Purdue shooting out of their mind at the beginning of the year, and was that unrealistic and unsustainable? And it turns out that was the case for last year. But now for this year, if we truly do believe that Purdue can go up to that next level, get to the Final Four or beyond, they will have to shoot better from 3, and they will have to have fewer turnovers. And in this exhibition game, as much as we believe or not that exhibitions don't matter, Purdue had the same problems that they had last year. Is that something to worry about if you're a Purdue fan?
Yes. I shooting 3-pointers are supposed to be variant. It just seems like with this collection of players, at times, the high side's not really there. Besides pretty much that one Mason Gillis big 3-point performance, a lot of the guys are just 33 to 35% shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been held afloat by Zach Edey in his ultra efficient offense and the free throws. It's encouraging that the game started off with Braden Smith taking 2 pull-up threes, because the way teams are going to defend that pick and roll is they're going to drop coverage to try and bump Edey and not give him a free lane. Because if Edey gets going, it's going to be points. Mm-hmm. So they have to stop him, cut off that lane. And the other guy you can't get around Edey clean. So Smith is going to have room for that pull-up. If he can knock that down in a just competent fashion, which I think he can, I think he's a much better shooter. I mean, his numbers last year were not bad. 37% from 3 on mostly self-created threes. So if he can get a couple guys around him that match that. And I do think that's where, talk about who's going to play next to them, whether it's Lance Jones, Ethan Morton, Camden Heide, Miles Colvin. I think Colvin's the X factor there, because if you talk just pure shooting stroke on this team, Miles Colvin's the guy. Just a born scorer. If they can just get anyone to get hot. I mean, Purdue, it's not a coincidence. Sometimes, basketball is not that hard. Purdue was a free throw on both ends away from the Final Four because Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein went insane.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that.
Yeah.
And do I feel better about Purdue this year? Yes, because I think they have more options that can do that. Last year, very limited of who was going to go off. But to wrap everything in a bow, I don't think Purdue could have played much worse than they did this game. And they went to overtime on the road, number 14 team. That was very well prepared.
Yeah.
They had the Shaq defense planned, Europe scouting, and they took them to overtime. So, again, this team should walk to the Sweet 16 no matter what. And that's just...
fingers crossed.
It's ridiculous. It gets even more ridiculous the further away from last March we get that wasn't the case last year.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get out of here, there are two players specifically I wanted to ask you about and get your opinion. One a newcomer, one a returner. You can take him in whichever order you'd like. One is going to be Lance Jones. What did you think of his play? I thought on offense, obviously not what we wanted. He didn't shoot particularly well. The percentages show that, but I thought on defense, he was very active. I thought he was kind of a more energetic than some folks out there. And the other one is Ethan Morton. He was out there for, I think, 20 some minutes, close to that. Didn't take a shot. And if you know anything about me and my coverage of Purdue, I love Ethan Morton. I think he can be a great player for this team, but we cannot play 4-on-5 on offense. We just cannot do that. I'm not saying he has to go out there and score 10, 15 points a game, but he has to be a threat. You can't play 20 minutes and not take a shot. So I just wondered your opinion on those two guys.
I was really encouraged by what Ethan Morton showed in the last scrimmage, and the little free fan showcase, whatever. He was 3 of 5, took a 3, took a couple pull-ups, but there were a couple times where he passed up open looks. He naturally is a facilitator of the basketball, and I get that. I get that the shooting's not quite there. But he kind of has to just force it at some point. Just get confident by seeing a couple go. And this offense, with as good as they rebound the ball offensively, a shot is always going to be preferred to a turnover. That's every offense. But like even a missed shot. No, I know what you mean. I mean, a missed shot is incredible
offensive. Yeah. Purdue is an incredible offensive rebounding team with Zach Edey and those around him. I mean, they out-rebounded Arkansas, I want to say, by
14-1.
14, yeah. So
a missed shot is more valuable than it is on most teams. And just the willingness to take that. At some point, you have to make teams defend all 5. Yeah. Or hope you get hot and just like knock down a few. See him go. Get some confidence. So it was a little discouraging not to see him take those. Lance Jones will take those.
Yes, he will.
He was 30 feet away with the shot clock going down and decided to step back further.
You love the confidence,
It's a lot. It's a lot. He had a couple drives where he got to the hoop. I think Purdue's going to need more of that. I think if you want to talk about limiting Braden Smith's turnovers, Lance Jones being able to do a little more with the ball will do that. Just try to take advantage of it a little bit on the back end when you do have all that attention on Edey and Smith. So he's one where I think the more comfortable he gets in the offense, the more going to see him, make plays. But he is dynamic with the ball. He's faster than anyone else Purdue had on the team last year. I think that speed is really what Painter is hoping will pay off for them in the long run.
Yeah, and that was surprising to me because, I mean, I didn't watch a lot of Southern Illinois games last year, so I can't say I was a student of Lance Jones' game. So to see him in live action with Purdue for the first time was, I think, like I said, even though he shot not great from the floor, just to see his intensity, see his speed, see his ability to get his hand on the ball on defense was encouraging. But Ethan Morton, I need more from you. I need to see something on offense, even if he's facilitating, in a better way, that would help Purdue. But we absolutely cannot play 4-on-5. Purdue has had that situation in the past, and it never works out. So, any final thoughts on the scrimmage before we head out of here tonight, Casey?
Purdue's still going to win the Big Ten?
Exhibition.
Yeah. Purdue's still going to win the Big Ten?
Yeah, absolutely.
By how many games? Less or more than last year?
Less. I say less because I think Michigan State is going to surprise, and I think the Purdue schedule is probably a little tougher maybe than last year.
Have you looked at the big men on Michigan State's rosters?
No.
Not great.
No, and I don't doubt that. I mean, you compare Edey to anybody else in the Big Ten, it's going to be not great for that person. But
so we did. One thing we touched on: Trey didn't look great next to Zach. Didn't look.
Yes, that's right. We should have talked about it. Go ahead. Especially because Trey Kaufman-Renn has been the guy that has been hyped up kind of all offseason, all summer long as it's going to be great. We're going to have him on the floor with Edey at the same time, and it's going to change how Edey plays. It's going to change how defenses guard Edey, which will open it up for Edey and so forth. And we didn't really see that in that first exhibition game.
Here's why we don't need to be alarmed. Because what happened? Purdue just finished the game with Mason Gillis. There are 3 guys there that can play next to Edey. Whether it's Trey Kaufman-Renn that night, Mason Gillis, who got going in the second half, or Caleb Furst, who probably played his worst game I've ever seen him play for Purdue.
Yeah, he did not stand out in any way.
So, but we've seen him at times. I mean, last year, Phil Knight, part of what kind of was shocking about Purdue is Caleb Furst is so big and fast that he made Purdue look like the more athletic team against Duke, against Gonzaga. Real bona fide problem. We've seen that from all 3 guys at times. So it didn't look great. It should get better. That he's got to just kind of get a little more comfortable with. Watch Trey Kaufman-Renn last year get better as the season went on. He looked outclassed most of the first half of the season last year. So I think you can reasonably expect him to find his comfort zone again. If he doesn't, Purdue has options. At the 4, loaded with options.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. If you're going to have a guy not live up to expectations on this Purdue team, you would much rather it be at the 4 position because there are people behind Trey Kaufman-Renn in this case who can really pick up the slack. But he did continue to have kind of that, as I said last week, that deer on roller skates kind of situation where he just looked a little too skittish and a little afraid. You can see the talent is there. The skill is there. He's just got to put it all together. So I'm excited to see him progress this year. But overall, I mean, nothing about this exhibition, really changed my opinion of, I think, what this team can be. Now, they're next in action on Wednesday on BTN Plus, I believe, against, was it Grace College?
It is Grace College.
Yeah,
Also,
I don't know where that...
Samford, who Purdue will play for the first game of the season. Have you seen the video? Trash talking video already.
What?
Stanford coach. Yeah. Some people, I believe this is not a direct quote, but some people say 7'4", some people say 7'10". We don't care. I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
I don't know what it means. But he followed it up by saying his 5'7", I don't know, star walk-on, some guy's ready to take the tip off.
5'7"?
5'7", maybe 5'8". 5'8" and a half. Do you think you could win a tip-off with Edey?
I was about to say, dear listeners, dear viewers, however you're watching this, I am 5'6". I could not win a tip-off with Zach Edey if you give me a stepladder. So I'm not real concerned about that. Although I will tell you, Casey, I went to an apple orchard with my family.
Not where I thought this was going.
This is relevant. This is relevant. The other day, and they had a sign with a caterpillar. You could measure yourself, with how tall are you compared to the caterpillar. So my son went up there. He's
already taller than you.
Already taller than me.
Right.
He was at 40 inches. So he's 3'4". And then he went to the doctor, and the doctor measured him, and it was 3'4". So the caterpillar was accurate. Now I stood next to the caterpillar, and Jess, gave me the head squash and see where I was. It said 5'7".
Oh,
so I think I might have to start calling I think I might have to start saying I'm 5'7" because the caterpillar said so, and he turned out to be right with my son. So I think it's accurate.
Legally you can say whatever you want.
That's true. Although it's on my,
I'm not a lawyer.
My driver's license could say 6'4". Who knows?
How tall does your driver's license say?
5'6".
Okay.
I'm not a liar.
Okay.
I'm not a liar. But even if I'm 5'7", I could not win a tip against Zach Edey. I stood next to I forget even which Purdue 7-footer I stood next to one time in my life. And it's just outrageous. You're like at their belly button. It's just you feel like a different species.
The issue though, I feel like I mocked another small time coach.
You did
about 6 months ago for calling out Purdue.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the secret.
Yeah, it didn't work
Talk
out
enough
well for you.
trash.
Yeah,
Talk enough
didn't work
trash.
out well for you. And the last thing, I want to add one thing before we go. My brother and his family did trick or treat at Matt Painter's house. And if anybody's interested,
Such a weird flex.
I can give you, exactly what Matt Painter was giving out.
What do you
Giving
mean,
out at his house.
like hypothetically? Like, is this like a subscriber exclusive?
Yeah, it's
where do people need to go?
To the field. It's subscriber exclusive to the field of 68.
In the comments below.
Yeah. Giving out full-size Skittles, full-size Reese's, and apparently full-size Starburst, though those were gone by the time my nephews got
like
there.
the whole roll?
Yeah, like a whole thing of Starburst, like you would get at the grocery store, just
The
like the
whole
pack,
thing.
not the two
And
packs.
Skittles.
That's what he said.
That's a lot of fruit candy.
Well, yeah, but he also had the Reese's cups. So,
Yeah.
you got your chocolate bowl and you got your fruit bowl. But luckily, he had the fruit because I'm not sure if the viewers are going to care about this, but my nephew, peanut allergy. So he's not going for the Reese's
How does
cups.
that work on Halloween? Why is he brave enough to go trick-or-treating?
Well, because
he have
doesn't
a sign on?
No, he doesn't have the allergy where it's like if he touches it, he's going to die.
What other allergies are there? You're either allergic or
no.
not,
I mean, like people can have a peanut allergy so bad that it's like if they're near it,
right.
Like if they touch it, it's bad.
I just assumed that was all peanut.
No, there's like levels to it. So if he eats it, very bad. But like my brother and his wife will like go through his candy in case something got mixed in and like, just get it out of there and he'll be fine. So very nice of, Coach Painter to have different varieties, have the chocolate, have the fruit flavored. So there you go. And that is the kind of content you get here only on the Field of 68 at the Old Gold podcast. So thank you so much for listening. Casey, you got anything else before we go out of here?
No, we've rattled enough.
There you go. Boiler up.